I want to ask you something that most people are too afraid to ask out loud. Do you know right now, at whatever job you are currently in, what would happen if you simply did not come back? Not quit dramatically, not send an angry email, just did not come back. Would anyone notice in the first hour, in the first day? Would the phone stop working? Would the systems go down? Would the clients call asking where you are? Or would everything carry on completely fine without you? Most people, if they are honest, are afraid to know the answer to that question because what it tells you about how much you actually matter can be devastating. Or it can be the most powerful thing you have ever discovered about yourself. The woman in today's story knew the answer she had always known, she just never had the opportunity to prove it, until the company she had given 9 years of her life to handed her that opportunity on a Friday afternoon in a redundancy letter that they would spend the next 6 weeks desperately wishing they could take back. Welcome back to Quietly Destroyed. I have been saving this one because this story is not just about revenge, it is about what happens when a company discovers too late that the person they thought was just one employee was actually everything. Her name on Reddit is Systems Down Sunday. I'll call her Catherine. Catherine had worked at a medium-sized logistics and supply chain company in Leeds for 9 years. She had joined as a systems coordinator, a junior role at 26 years old, but Catherine was not a junior thinker. Within her first year, she had identified 3 critical inefficiencies in the company's operational systems, written them up formally and presented solutions that saved the company an estimated £40,000 annually. Her line manager, at the time a woman who recognized genuine talent, had promoted her within 14 months. Over the following 8 years, Catherine became quietly, methodically, without ever making a fuss about it, the person who knew everything, not in a showy way. She never announced it, never made it political, never used it as leverage. She simply, over 9 years, built a knowledge base so deep, so comprehensive, so completely hers, that the company could not function properly without her. She knew the systems, every software platform, every workaround, every integration between systems that had been built over years by people who had long since left and never documented properly, because Catherine had always been there to hold it together. She knew the clients, every preference, every communication style, every special arrangement that existed nowhere in writing, only in Catherine's memory. She knew the suppliers, every contract quirk, every person to call when something went wrong, every back channel that had been built through years of relationship. She was, as her Reddit post put it, the institutional memory of an entire organization, and the organization had absolutely no idea. 18 months before this story ends, the company was acquired, a larger corporate group bought the business, and with the acquisition came a new management team, a restructuring consultant, and a very enthusiastic cost-cutting exercise. The restructuring consultant, a man named David, spent 3 months analyzing the business. He interviewed staff, reviewed headcount, looked at job titles and salary bands, and identified, through a process that Catherine later described as impressively superficial, several roles he considered redundant. Catherine's was one of them. His reasoning, as he presented it to the new management team, was that Catherine's role as systems and operations manager overlapped significantly with the new centralized operations team that the acquiring company was installing. And so the situation unfolded slowly over time, with no one realizing the importance of Catherine's role until it was too late, and the consequences of her departure began to emerge. That her responsibilities could be absorbed. That her salary, which after 9 years was substantial, could be saved. He recommended immediate redundancy. The new management team, who had been in the building for 11 weeks, agreed. Catherine was called in on a Friday afternoon at 4:30 p.m., handed a letter, thanked for her service, and told her role was being made redundant with immediate effect. She would be paid her statutory redundancy, and her notice period in lieu effective today. Please hand in your access card and laptop. Catherine looked at the letter, looked at David, who was in the room, and at the new operations director, who was also in the room, and said very calmly, "Of course, could I just ask, is there a handover plan? There are a number of live processes and client arrangements I should brief someone on." David said they had it covered. The centralized team would handle the transition. Catherine nodded, said, "Wonderful," handed over her laptop, handed over her access card, and said goodbye to the receptionist, who she had worked with for 7 years, and drove home. That evening she opened a bottle of wine, sat in her garden, and made a list, not of grievances, of everything she knew that nobody else did. The list took 4 hours to write, and was 63 pages long. Catherine spent the weekend doing 3 things. Thing 1, she rested completely, deeply, without guilt. She slept 9 hours on Saturday night for the first time in years. Thing 2, she registered her own consultancy, a limited company, registered with Companies House on Saturday morning. It took 15 minutes and £12. She named it something simple, professional, clean, and she set her day rate at 3 times her previous salary. And then she began to think about her future. Thing 3. She updated her LinkedIn, not dramatically, not with any reference to what had happened, just available for systems and operations consultancy from immediate effect. That was all. Monday morning came and Catherine was at home, drinking coffee, reading a book, for the first time on a Monday morning in 9 years. At 8:47 a.m., her personal phone rang. It was the new operations director. Calling from his personal number, she let it ring. At 9:15 he called again. She let it ring. At 9:43 he sent a text. "Catherine, urgent. Can you call me back, please? There are some questions about the system configurations." Catherine read it, set her phone down, made herself another coffee. At 10:30 he called again. This time she answered. She said, "Good morning, how can I help?" He said there was a problem with the order management system. The overnight automated process had not run. 37 client orders were stuck in the queue. The centralized team could not identify the issue. Could she just quickly talk them through it? Catherine said, "Of course, I should let you know. As of Saturday morning, I am operating as an independent consultant. My day rate is available on my website. If you'd like to raise a purchase order, I'm happy to assist from today." There was silence, and then the operations director said, "Catherine, we were colleagues." Catherine said, "We were, and I wish the company every success. My details are on the website. Have a lovely day." She ended the call. Her phone rang 4 more times that morning. She did not answer. By Tuesday morning, the company's order management system was still down. The centralized team, who had been parachuted in from the parent company, and who were extremely competent at the systems they knew, were completely lost in a system built over 9 years, with integrations, workarounds, and configurations that existed nowhere in any documentation, because Catherine had always been there to maintain them. By Wednesday, 3 of the company's largest clients had called to complain about delayed orders. One had sent a formal written complaint. One had asked for the first time whether they should consider an alternative supplier. By Thursday, David, the restructuring consultant, was still in the building. Catherine heard this from a former colleague who messaged her on WhatsApp with a series of emojis that required no further explanation. By Friday, 1 week after, her redundancy, the operations director sent an email to Catherine's new business email address. Formal, professional, requesting a meeting to discuss short-term consultancy support. Catherine read it, replied 24 hours later, "Thank you for your email. I am currently reviewing my availability. For new clients, I will be in touch shortly." She was not in touch shortly. She waited another 5 days. In those 5 days, she had 2 conversations, the first with a recruitment consultant who had been chasing her for 2 years, and who, within 48 hours of her LinkedIn update, had 3 companies interested in speaking with her. The second with a former client contact, someone she had worked with closely for 4 years, who had seen her update, and called to ask whether she would consider working with them directly. By the time Catherine replied to the operations director, she had 2 confirmed consultancy clients, neither of which was her former employer. Catherine agreed to the meeting. She drove to the office she had worked in for 9 years, signed in at reception as a visitor, and was shown to the meeting room by a receptionist who looked at her with an expression that said everything without saying anything. The operations director was there, and to Catherine's quiet satisfaction, so was David, the restructuring consultant, who had recommended her redundancy 11 weeks ago. Catherine sat down, placed her consultancy rate card on the table, and listened as the situation, as explained to her, was that the company was experiencing significant operational challenges following the restructure, that the centralized team, while highly capable, were taking longer than anticipated to integrate with the existing systems, and that there were a number of client relationships that required historical context that only Catherine possessed. They would like to engage her on a consultancy basis to assist with the transition. Catherine listened to all of this and then said, "I appreciate you reaching out. I want to be transparent. I currently have 2 existing clients whose work takes priority. I can offer you 2 days per week at my standard day rate on a 12-week contract with a review at the end of that period." David said the rate was significantly higher than expected. Catherine said, "I understand. It reflects the specialist nature of the knowledge required and the urgency of the situation. I'm happy to give you time to consider." She picked up her rate card, stood up, and said, "I have another meeting at 2. Let me know by end of day Thursday." She walked out of the building, signed out at reception, and drove home. They called at 11 a.m. on Thursday, accepted every term. Catherine worked with the company for 12 weeks, 2 days per week, at 3 times her previous daily rate. She fixed the systems, she briefed the team, she documented for the first time properly every process, every integration, every client arrangement in a handover document so comprehensive that it took 3 weeks to write, and which the company paid her to produce. At the end of the 12 weeks, the operations director offered her a permanent contract. Catherine declined. She had 3 consultancy clients by then, and her monthly income was 140% higher than her previous salary. She worked 3 days a week from home mostly. She wrote at the end of her Reddit post, "The funniest part is that David, the consultant, who recommended my redundancy, submitted a report at the end of the project, recommending that the company invest in proper knowledge management systems and never make a key operational role redundant without a full handover period. I read that report because they paid me to review it. I billed 2 hours for the review. I did not mention the irony in the invoice." And then, at the very end, she wrote something that I have not stopped thinking about. She said, 9 years ago I walked into that building as a junior coordinator who nobody took seriously. I walked out of it for the last time as a consultant who had just been paid more in 12 weeks than I earned in my best annual salary there. They made me redundant because they didn't know what I was worth. I always knew. I was just waiting for the right moment to show them. David thought when he recommended Catherine's redundancy that he was removing a cost center. He did not know, because he had spent 11 weeks looking at job titles and salary bands instead of understanding what people actually did, that he was removing the foundations of an entire operation. This is the thing about institutional knowledge: it is invisible until it is gone, and by the time you realize it is gone, you are already standing in the rubble, calling the person who held it together from their garden where they are reading a book and considering whether to answer. I want to say something to every person listening who has ever felt invisible at work. Who has ever done the work that nobody sees? Who has ever been told, directly or indirectly, that they are easily replaceable? Document what you know, build your expertise formally, create the record of what you do, not for them, for you. Because the day they decide you are replaceable is the day you want to be ready to prove them wrong, not by fighting, not by arguing, but by being exactly what Catherine was, so essential that the only question when they finally call is how much you charge. That is the end of episode 12, here on Quietly Destroyed. This one is for everyone who has ever been the person who holds everything together, while someone else takes the credit, and someone else again decides you are expendable. You are not expendable, you are the system. Leave a comment below. Have you ever been the Catherine in your organization? Or have you watched a Catherine leave and seen what happened next? Subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we have a story about a woman whose neighbor built an extension illegally through her garden boundary and discovered 11 years too late that she had a land registry document that changed everything. I will see you then. Know your worth, document everything, and never ever let them see you sweat. The best revenge is always served cold, and